study they just published.
It has to do with those dangerous antibiotic-resistant infections you've probably heard about. But this time, the hospital looked at how many children are suffering from those infections. Here's Good Morning Cleveland's Karina Paiza.
Doctors are seeing more and more kids with superbug infections, normal bacteria that becomes resistant to multiple drugs.
We're seeing an increase in bacteria that are resistant to almost all antibiotics.
That increase causing a 700% rise in infections in kids here in America since 2007. Dr. Sharon Maripal with University Hospitals is the lead author on a new study looking into the issue.
So when you have an infection with these bacteria, it's harder and harder to treat.
Adding to the concern, these kinds of infections used to just be confined to hospitals. Now they're spreading out into the community.
These used to be infections that you really only saw in grown-ups and kids who'd been in the hospital for a long time, who were in the intensive care units, who had invasive procedures done or really suppressed immune systems.
Dr. Maripal tells me reversing this trend is something we all need to be a part of.
Most importantly, we cannot use antibiotics where we know that they're unlikely to be helpful. If we have a cold, if our child has a cold, we shouldn't be using antibiotics for that. We shouldn't be asking for antibiotics for that.
But this is a global issue, and overprescribing here in the U.S. is just part of the problem. About 1.5% of infections in America are antibiotic resistant. Compare that to more than a quarter in other parts of the world.
Asia and the Pacific, a lot of these countries have antibiotics available over the counter. We live in a connected world, and these organisms are spread not only within this country, but also between countries in the world.
Dr. Maripal says antibiotics used in healthy farm animals are also adding to the problem, putting extra antibiotic out into the environment. Actually, more than 85% of the antibiotics used here in the United States are used in farm animals. In the studio, Karina Paiza, News 5.
And News 5 at 5.